In this last session of the poem, The Garden, let us quickly once again look at the analysis of each stanza of the poem. Stanza 1. How futile are the endeavors of men by means of which they simply go crazy in order to win a crown of the leaves of a palm tree or an oak tree or a laurel tree for their military or civic or poetic achievements. They perform unceasing or endless labors in order to obtain a crown of leaves from a single tree or herb. The short and ever narrowing shades of these trees wisely rebuke such men of their hard labors, while all flowers and all trees act unitedly to weave garlands with their shades, these garlands being the garlands of rest and tranquility, and therefore are far superior to the garlands or crowns of leaves which those men seek. Stanza 2. Fair quiet, I have found you here in this garden. I have found here your dear sister Innocence also. For a long time I made the mistake of seeking you both in the company of busy men. But if at all your sacred plants grow here on the earth, they grow only among the plants of a garden, and not in places crowded with human beings. The company of human beings is nothing but barbarous as compared with this enjoyable solitude in the garden. Stanza 3. Neither the whiteness of the complexion nor the redness of the lips of ladies has ever been known to be so lovingly as the lovely green of the plants and leaves in a garden. Doting lovers, who are as cruel in their actions as the flame of love which torments them, show their cruelty by carving the names of their sweethearts with knives on the barks of trees. It is regrettable that either these lovers are not quite aware of, or they do not pay enough attention to the fact that the beauties of a garden are far more attractive than the beauties of their ladies. So far as I am concerned, O fair trees, wherever I happen to make use of a knife to cut into your barks, I shall carve no woman's name, but only your own names. Stanza 4. When our love has run its course and our passion has been exhausted, we can withdraw into a garden for rest and refreshment. Or when Cupid, the god of love, is not actively at work to people fall in love, he withdraws into a garden for relaxation. The gods who run after earthly women whom they think beautiful find that their chase has ended in their getting hold of trees instead of women. For instance, god Apollo ran after the nymph Daphne, not in order that he should hold the laurel tree into which Daphne was to be transferred. Similarly, god Pan hotly pursued the nymph Syrinx, not in order to satisfy his lust, but because he wanted to get hold of a reed into which that nymph was to be metamorphosed. Stanza 5. What a wonderful time I am having in this garden. Ripe apples hang downwards from the trees so as to touch my head. The delicious bunches of grapes growing on the vines come into such close contact with my lips. I walk that their juice enters my mouth. The nectarines and the exquisitely formed peaches come into my hands of their own accord, without my making any effort whatsoever. The melons grow on the ground in such plenty that, as I walk on, My feet strike against them, and my walking is obstructed. And entangled among the flowers, I fall down on the grass. Stanza 6. While my body remains on the grass, my mind withdraws itself from the body because it is not interested in the lesser or inferior pleasures offered by the fruits. My mind seeks the happiness of a different kind, which originates from the mind itself. The mind is like an ocean, where each creature living on the land has a counterpart in water. However, the mind can also create altogether different lands and different oceans, which quite surpass the real lands and real oceans. The mind reduces everything that has been created to nothingness, giving rise to fresh and vigorous thoughts in the shade of a green tree. Stanza 7. Here in the garden, close to fountains, where my feet sleep on account where my feet slip on account of the wetness of the ground, or close to some fruit trees, the lower parts of the trunks of which are covered with moss. My soul discards the outer garment of the body and goes noiselessly into the branches of the trees. There on the trees, my soul sits like a bird and sings. Then my soul preens and combs its bright wings as a bird's does. And finally, having prepared itself for a longer flight, waves the manifold light in its wings. Stanza 8. Here I find myself in the same happy state in which Adam was when in the Garden of Eden he walked alone, without a companion. When he found himself in such a pure and sweet place, no comparison could have been appropriate for him. Or finding himself in such a pure and sweet place as the Garden of Eden, Adam could not have wished for any companion, and no companion could have suited him. But it was not the happy lot of a mortal to be allowed to roam about along in that place. Had he continued to live alone in the gardens of Eden, he would have enjoyed the happiness of two paradises. One, the paradise which was the Garden of Eden, and second, the paradise of being alone. Stanza 9. How skillful was the gardener who made the flowers and plants grow here in such a manner and according to such a pattern that they collectively serve as a sundial. The rays of the sun fall on this sundial with diminished heat after passing through the green leaves, which may be compared to the signs of the zodiac. Zodiac is the name given to that belt of the heavens, which includes all the apparent positions of the sun and the planets. And the hard-working bee, while at work, is able to calculate the passing of time as correctly as we human beings can by consulting this sundial. After all, how the passing of such sweet and refreshing hours could be calculated in the garden except by means of the sundial formed by plants and flowers. The garden, which comprises 9 8-line stanzas, opens with the assertion that people ordinarily confuse themselves, that is, amaze, with a possible pun on the maze, a common feature of 17th century formal gardens, by pursuing recognition in only one field, as represented by wreaths associated with military, palm, civic oak, and poetic bay achievements. Against those conventional modes of activity, the speaker who enters the poem as I in the next stanza argues for the ease and retirement embodied in the combined vegetation of the garden. Its plants, he offers, will provide the quiet and innocence he has mistakenly sought in the busy world. For such conditions result not from society but from solitude. The third and fourth stanzas, the speaker reflects on the destructiveness of lovers who record their passions by carving their initials on trees. The white and red, that is, pallor and blushing, of the lovers' complexions are not actually as worthy of admiration as is the green of the restful garden. Against the intense pursuits recounted in classical mythology, specifically in Ovid's Metamorphoses, the speaker, now using the first person plural we, proposes love's retreat to the security of the garden. With the fifth stanza, the speaker exalts in his own sensuous indulgence the rich fruits of the garden. In an environment without passionate distractions, desire is transferred to the other senses, notably to taste and touch. The next stanza, however, suggests a transition from physical to mental or intellectual fulfillment as the mind withdraws from lesser pleasures, from pleasureless, to those of what might be called the creative imagination. The divisiveness of worldly pursuits, whether of ambition or love, resolves to the unity implied by the annihilation of all that is made to a green thought in a green shade. The seventh stanza opens to a spiritual transcendence as the speaker, at the slippery sliding foot of a fountain, or at the roots of a fruit tree, that is, at the point of origin, discards his physical being. His soul soars upwards and sings in preparation for a longer flight, presumably its eventual glorification, that is, uniting with God. At this point, however, the speaker steps back from his prophetic speculations and drops into the past tense. Before the coming of Eve, man, that is Adam, experienced bliss, but it was not his destiny as a mortal, means as a human being, to live alone. When he comments to paradises it were in one to live in paradise alone, the speaker may be reasserting his view that his garden must be without the tensions of passion, or he may be restating his preference for total solitude. The concluding stanza introduces a skillful gardener who creates a sundial of flowers and herbs, thus re-establishing the world of time against the implied claims of eternity and the Edenic past of the previous two stanzas. The only industry in this garden of meditation and reflection, however, is that of the bee, which, unlike the busy humans of the opening sections, moves into with the rhythms of nature. And with this, we finally come to an end of the detailed explanation and analysis of the poem The Garden, also known as Thoughts in a Garden by Andrew Marvell, which is prescribed for the students of BA Part 1 English Literature, Paper 1. Thank you.